In this video, we're looking at 8 UK milk brands you might want to think twice about. From a feed additive that sparked a national boycott, to packaging that hides where your milk really comes from, what you're about to find out might change your next shop. Stay until the end. We'll reveal 3 brands that actually do it right. Let's expose what's really in your glass. Number 8. Long Life UHT milk. You'll find it sat on the shelf, not in the chilled cabinet, in those cartons that promise to keep for months without a fridge. That convenience is genuinely useful if you're stocking a cupboard or you hate pouring milk down the sink when it turns. But it comes from a trade-off, and the trade-off is heat. To make milk last that long, it's blasted to around 140 degrees for a few seconds, far hotter than the gentle pasteurization used for fresh milk. That extra heat does 2 things. It changes the flavour, which is why long life milk can taste faintly cooked or caramelized compared to the fresh stuff. And it knocks back some of the more delicate nutrients, particularly vitamin B12 and vitamin C, with losses of roughly 10 to 20% depending on how long it's been stored. Now let's be fair. The protein, the calcium, the fat, all of that stays pretty much intact. So this is not milk stripped of all its goodness, like some videos will tell you. The same goes for dried milk powder, which is handy and lasts forever, but takes the processing a step further and loses a touch more of those heat-sensitive vitamins along the way. And here's a detail the long shelf life hides. Once you open a carton of UHT, it behaves exactly like ordinary milk, so it has to go in the fridge and be used within a few days, just like the fresh stuff. But if you're buying milk for the taste and the full nutritional package, and you've got a working fridge, fresh beats long life every time. Keep the UHT for the camping trip and the back of the cupboard, not the daily cuppa. Number 7. Flavoured milk drinks and milkshakes. These are the bottles dressed up to look healthy. They've got milk in the name, a picture of a cow or a strawberry on the front, and they're often parked right next to the plain milk, so they feel like a sensible choice. The catch is the sugar. A lot of these chilled milkshake-style drinks carry several spoonfuls of added sugar in a single bottle, sometimes more than you'd find in a fizzy drink. And because they're marketed as a milk product and aimed squarely at children and teenagers heading back from school, plenty of parents assume they're getting wholesome dairy and nothing else. Plain milk already contains natural sugar in the form of lactose, and that's fine. The thing to watch for is the added sugar piled on top for flavour. So the advice here is simple. Turn the bottle around and read the sugar line before it goes in the trolley. If you want the calcium and the protein without the sugar hit, a glass of plain milk with a spoon of cocoa does the same job for a fraction of the sugar and a fraction of the price. Number 6. Alpro. Now we're moving into the plant-based aisle, because these days milk doesn't always come from a cow, and the marketing can be just as slippery. Alpro is one of the biggest names in dairy alternatives owned by the food giant Danone, and on the face of it, the green, leafy, planet-friendly branding is very appealing. But the advertising watchdog, the ASA, has previously warned Alpro to tighten up the environmental claims it was making. That's worth knowing, because the whole reason a lot of people pay more for these drinks is the promise that they're better for the planet and better for them. Some of that promise stands up. Plant drinks generally do have a lower carbon footprint than dairy, but lower footprint and good for you nutritionally are not the same thing, and a sweetened flavoured plant drink can be a long way from the simple, natural product the carton suggests. If you do switch to a plant drink, look for the unsweetened version, check that it's fortified with calcium and B12, since it won't have them naturally, and treat the glossy eco-promises with a healthy pinch of salt. A fair few of these cartons also carry added oils, gums, and a surprising amount of sugar once you go past the plain versions, so the leafy green packaging is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Alpro was actually one of the first names caught up in the watchdog's wider crackdown on so-called greenwashing in the dairy alternative aisle, and it wasn't the last, as you're about to see. Number 5, the A2 Milk Company. This one sits in the fridge with regular fresh milk, but costs noticeably more, and the whole pitch is built on a single idea. The company says its milk comes from cows that produce only the A2 type of protein, rather than the mix of A1 and A2 you get in standard milk, and that this makes it kinder on the stomach and easier to digest. It sounds clever, and for a small number of people who genuinely react to ordinary milk, it may make a difference. But here's the part the premium price tag doesn't shout about. The wider science is far from settled. Europe's Food Safety Authority reviewed the evidence and found no link between the ordinary A1 protein and the health problems that early marketing hinted at, and most independent reviews since have called the digestion benefits inconclusive at best. So you're often paying a premium for a claim that the evidence doesn't strongly back. If regular milk genuinely upsets you, by all means try it and see. But for most people, this is a more expensive bottle of milk wrapped around a story that science hasn't confirmed. Number 4. Oatly. If Alpro got a warning, Oatly got the full red card. The Swedish oat drink brand built its name on bold, cheeky adverts about saving the planet, and a few years back the ASA investigated 5 of its environmental claims after more than 100 complaints. 4 of those 5 claims were judged misleading, and the adverts were banned. One of the headline claims said Oatly generated 73% less carbon dioxide than milk. The problem was that the figure only applied to one specific Oatly product compared to one specific type of cow's milk, but the advert made it sound like it covered everything they sold. Another claim overstated how much the meat and dairy industries pollute compared to all the world's transport combined. Oatly's response, to its credit, was to admit it could have been clearer, and it pointed out the bigger 73% figure was calculated from grower to grocer for its barista product. The complaints, well over 100 of them, came partly from farming and environmental groups, and the National Farmers Union welcomed the ruling, with its dairy chairman saying competition is healthy, but it needs to be honest and based on facts. And to be fair, oat drinks really do tend to have a smaller environmental footprint than dairy. But this is a textbook lesson in why you can't take a carton's green halo at face value. When a brand has to be told by the regulator to prove its claims, that's your cue to read the small print rather than the slogan. Number 3. Supermarket farm brands. This is the one that catches almost everybody, and once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Walk down the chilled aisle and you'll spot milk and dairy dressed up with rolling green hills, a little red barn, a homely sounding farm name, and a proud Union Jack. It all whispers small family farm, doesn't it? The trouble is, a lot of those cosy farm names are completely invented. They're marketing brands, not real places, and the milk inside can come from large industrial operations, with the product pulled from dozens of farms you'll never see. British farmers got so fed up with it, they launched a campaign called Farmers Against Farm Washing, backed by names like Riverford, and well-known faces from Food Telly, and even a group of MPs wrote to the big supermarkets about it. The consumer group, which also found shoppers could easily be misled by all the flags and farm imagery, and the BBC ran investigations into supermarkets using fake farm names on their everyday ranges. It got serious enough that the government opened a consultation on fairer food labelling, looking at making brands be clearer about where food really comes from and how the animals were actually reared. The supermarkets, for their part, say they follow the labelling rules to the letter, and that they invent these farm brands simply to help shoppers find quality own-label products. You can decide for yourself how convincing that is. None of this means the milk is unsafe. It means the picture on the front is selling you a fantasy of where it came from, and that pastoral fairy tale is part of why genuine British family farms are struggling to survive, with many fearing they'll have to pack it in within a year or two. So treat the cartoon farm and the invented farm name as decoration, not information. If a brand won't actually tell you which farms its milk comes from, that silence tells you something. Number 2. Cravendale. Here's a brand a lot of people genuinely trust, with its distinctive bottle and the promise of milk that stays fresher for longer thanks to extra filtering. It's owned by Arla, the biggest dairy co-op in the country, and you're paying a premium for that filtered, longer-lasting product. That filtering is the selling point. The milk passed through fine filters to strip out more of the bacteria so it keeps for longer, and you're paying noticeably more per pint for the privilege. But Cravendale has run adverts showing happy cows out in green fields, and that's exactly where it ran into trouble. The animal welfare group Viva complained, and an undercover investigation it carried out, reported by national press back in 2023, found that some of Arla's supplier farms operate what's called a zero grazing system, where the cows never actually go outside at all. Arla's response was that all its supplier farms meet strict, non-negotiable welfare standards, and that more than 90% of them are grass-based, but it also accepted that not all of its milk comes from cows guaranteed access to pasture. So the bucolic image on the advert didn't quite match the reality behind every bottle. The lesson is the same as the farm name trick. If the green fields are doing the selling, Ask whether the cows ever actually see those fields, because sometimes the honest answer is no. And keep that ownership in mind, because being an Arla brand, Cravendale was swept up in the very same storm that puts our number one right at the top of the list, number one. And the brand at the very top of this list is Arla itself. If you've heard of any milk controversy in the last couple of years, this is almost certainly it. Back in November 2024, Arla announced it would trial a feed additive called Bovaer across 30 British farms, working alongside Tesco, Aldi and Morrisons. Bovaer is designed to cut the methane that cows burp out by as much as 27%, which on paper is good news for the climate, and its maker points to more than 150 studies behind it. But the announcement absolutely exploded online. People started pouring milk down the sink, calling for boycotts, and sharing wild conspiracy theories, including a completely false claim linking it to Bill Gates, which the additives maker had to publicly knock down. Now let's be straight about the facts, because this is where a lot of videos go off the rails. The additive was approved as safe by the UK's Food Standards Agency. The cow breaks it down in its gut, and it does not pass through into the milk you drink. So the panic itself was largely overblown. The real legitimate concern here is trust and transparency. Many shoppers had no idea their everyday supermarket milk was caught up in the trial at all, and that's the problem. On top of that, the watchdogs at Ethical Consumer ranked Arla near the bottom of the dairy table, partly because it was twice judged to have used misleading language like net zero and climate neutral in its marketing, and because it shared so little about its actual emissions. So Arla lands at number one, not because its milk is dangerous, but because when it comes to telling you the full story, it has repeatedly fallen short. And for a brand whose milk ends up in so many bottles across so many supermarkets, often under a plain-owned label that never says Arla on the front, that lack of straight talking matters. This is one of the giants of British dairy, behind household names like Lurpak and Anchor as well. So when it stumbles on transparency, an awful lot of shoppers are affected without ever realising they're buying its milk at all. And that, more than any additive, is the real reason it tops this list. So that's the 8 to be wary of. Now for the good news, because plenty of brands genuinely do earn your trust. Here are 3 safer options worth reaching for. First, certified organic milk, and the best known name on the shelf is Yeo Valley Organic. The word that matters here is organic, because in this country, that label is backed by the Soil Association, the strongest animal welfare standard we've got. It means the cows graze outdoors for most of the year when the weather allows, no genetically modified feed, no routine antibiotics, and no artificial pesticides on the land. Yeo Valley also publishes a clear policy that it doesn't kill surplus male calves, rearing them instead, which is more than most can say. No brand is flawless, but if you want a simple rule in the supermarket, the organic label does a lot of the hard work for you, and most shops now carry their own organic line too, if you want to spend a little less. And even on standard milk, looking for the red tractor or RSPCA assured mark gives you a basic welfare baseline to stand on. Second, look for the free-range dairy pasture promise logo. This is a small black and white badge that you'll spot on certain bottles in some of the big supermarkets, and it's one of the most honest labels in the whole aisle. It guarantees the milk comes from cows that spend at least 180 days a year out at grass, and crucially, that the farmers behind it are paid a fair, sustainable price for their milk. That second part is a big deal because so many of our dairy farmers are paid so little they can sell a pint for less than a bottle of water. Buying pasture promise milk is a way of voting with your trolley for cows in fields and family farms that survive. Third, and this is the one closest to the old days, go local. Track down a local or independent dairy that delivers to your door, ideally in returnable glass bottles the way it used to be done. A good example is a small independent like Acorn Dairy, an organic family operation that runs on its own renewable energy, has a clear policy on its calves, and brings milk back to the doorstep in glass. The supply chain is short. You can actually find out which farm your milk comes from, and you're putting money straight into a British family farm, instead of squeezing it out of one. And if you only ever shop in the big supermarkets, here's a handy tip to finish on. Of all the major chains, Waitrose is currently the only one with a minimum grazing pledge for the milk it sells. So that's a sensible default if the specialist options aren't near you. So there you have it. 8 brands where the carton isn't telling you the whole story, and 3 you can pour into your tea with a clear conscience. None of this is about fear. It's about knowing what the friendly farm pictures and the clever slogans are really hiding, so that the next time you're stood in that cold aisle, you're the one making the choice, not the marketing.